So we'll see if some others join in a second, but in the meantime, Lana, let me introduce you. I'm quite happy that you accepted to join us. I met Lana some time ago. She's got a fantastic group, a little bit meta, fantastic group, a fantastic community of community builders that I've been part of for, I think, a few years now. I can't remember exactly, but when I joined or when we met, but I think that was pre-pandemic. So different world back then.
Everything before COVID is fuzzy.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, so Lana, among other things, she's the author of the book Community Builder, Designing Communities for Change. She's the chairperson for the Neurodiversity Foundation. So I'm really excited as well to hear what sort of insights can you bring from that side. And she's the co-founder of the Community Rituals and Neurodiversity Education Academy. And today is going to be sharing with us quite a bit about her experience, and we're going to be discussing engagement. So Lana, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. And I do have, since we're talking about engagement, I was thinking might as well start us off with something that would get us engaged. Though I think there's a bit of a limitation for some people who cannot, who cannot easily access. So this is a Jamboard. And I'm curious to know who is able to access the Jamboard. Oh, let me just... So this is one way, and perhaps something that you can, that you can use within your communities. This is a way to look at who's in the room. If you can refresh, should be able to have access to it already. And I can also share. Can I share my screen? Yeah, there you go. It works. So it's similar to how you would use a Miro or a mural. You have the post-it at the side. So with this sticky note, just write your name. And in this polarity of introvert or extrovert, where do you find yourself? Where do you see yourselves in it? And I'm gonna start writing down mine. So as you can see, the sticky note will be a bit too big, so just make it smaller and keep on copy pasting and see where you're at. Danielle, if you can refresh. Some said they already have access to it. It says view only. Oh, this is anyone in the link. Okay, let me put that one again. Can you please refresh? Also refresh to my end. So Renzo, hopefully you have. There you go. C-Street. Thank you for your patience on that. It's so interesting to see the names popping in. There seems to be a high energy field here in this group right now, leaning towards high energy and a lot in groups. Then we have Dave. I think last one. and also a lot of creators in the space. Yeah. And then if you're done, if you can go to the next slide, there's a question of what words, feelings, images do you associate with the terms community engagement? And again, just pop in a sticky note with what words, feelings, or images do you associate with the terms community engagement? Taking part in rituals, cycles of empathy and listening, belonging. I have 1 minute to go. Okay. So looking at what you've written down, there's so many keywords from diversity, human first approach, continuous flow, experimental, collective learning, leadership development, welcoming, belonging, cycles of empathy and listening, inclusive engagement. So these are all words, feelings, images that you associate with the terms community engagement. And I'm gonna put it in the chat again for me, since you just came in, just in case you'd want to also pop it in later. So I'm Lana Jelenjev, and like what Danielle said, I've been a part of multiple community builders group, community groups. And one of the things that I would love to share here with you are some of the shifts that I've been seeing. And I've also been in conversations with other community builders or community founders or community managers. And before we really get into the details of the model itself that I would like to share, I'd like for us to have in pairs, so that Daniel, if you can help put us in pairs. And in the pairing, what we will be doing is you will be sharing a memory of when you were in a community or when you were involved in a community and what made you engaged in that community.
Yeah.
So,
Lana, I'm terribly sorry. I'm going to have to apologize. I don't know what's happening, but the Zoom account is blocked for some reason. I'm unable to log in as a host.
Okay.
I don't know why. So apologies for that.
Then we have David, who cannot also speak. So maybe we can just do it here. It's a small group anyway. So what we'll be doing is, if we can invite one or two to share a memory of when you were engaged in a community, what made you engaged in this community? And as you are sharing, the rest of us listening, I would be inviting this practice of listening with the third ear. And listening with the third ear, in Filipino psychology, we call it pakikiramdam. And pakikiramdam is heightened perception and heightened sensitivity and shared perception. So what we will be doing is, as one shares their story, we would be listening for what was the energy that the person was, while the person was sharing. What, the change, are there changes in intonation? Were there changes in gestures that you were seeing? Were there changes in pace? So you would be using, that listening with the third ear. So just listening for what was not being said, and also what is happening inside of you as you listen to that person share that memory. What is going on inside of you? Is there some sensations that you're feeling in your body? Are there thoughts coming up in your head? And what we will do is, after that person has shared this memory of when they were in an engaged community, that we will feedback, what did we hear with our third ear? So who would like to share a story, share a memory of where you were when you were engaged in a community, and what made you engaged in this community?
If you want, you are also welcome to type it, and I can read it out loud.
Or maybe, Daniel, I'm gonna put you in the spot here. I'm gonna make you the guinea pig for now. So yeah.
So I'm thinking of a memory. This was an event a while ago, and it was a sort of self-organized community. We are gathering in Croatia, I think, and so everyone traveled from different places. I traveled on my own. I was like, or at least I hadn't met anyone else, and I remember very acutely that moment of sort of arriving to the location and then running into people for the first time, into a few of others, like the familiar faces after the long trip where I was just surrounded by strangers, and the difference of that feeling. And suddenly it was like, oh, this is a very joyous moment, like something's happening here. And it was like, now something has begun, which before wasn't quite happening.
Thank you for sharing that. And I'm gonna just be feedbacking on some words that I picked up, and how, like the word landing, there was a difference in how you share that. Like it also felt like that, that feeling of landing. And also your face, there was a smile. At the first there was a bit more of seriousness, and then there was a smile when you were mentioning of when you met familiar people, and how that transpired. I'm curious, for those that are here, if you want to also share, what did you hear in that, with listening with that third ear? What did you pick up on, and how did it also resonated with you? And if you want, you can also choose the chat function to share.
Well, it reminded me a similar episode that I had actually when I went to it was like a gathering, and I didn't know anyone there, so this is a difference. But when I arrived, I was soon like welcomed by a lot of people, smiling faces, and everybody invited me to join like circles, and yeah, I found like I felt part of the gathering since the beginning because of the welcome that they gave me. Yeah.
Yeah, there's that resonance that I'm, sensing with what you've just shared, Pier Paolo, about how you felt part of it. You felt included, that inclusion there. So this is, like what I said, this is an exercise that you might want to try it out further in your communities in terms of how we can listen with the third ear. In Filipino psychology, it's really focusing on how am I tuning in with myself, how am I tuning with the other, and how am I tuning in with the field. And all of that happens simultaneously. And in the way that we listen and give feedback, these are some things that we can bring back in the conversations. And as you probably noticed, how I've started with different activities and also the sharing or thinking of the memory, I personally believe that there needs to be a shift. And I'm going to share. Oh, we have a problem because host disabled participant screen sharing. We'll need to have a work around this. Let me just so this is the how can we go about this?
Do you have them in Google Slides, perhaps?
No, I have them in Canva, so I can share it. Can view. Okay, so I'm gonna put it in this chat. Let's see.
Thank you, and apologies for this.
Things can happen. So this is this idea of there is the need to shift the perspective around community and community engagement. And one of the activities or projects that I'm part of, I don't know if you're familiar with the community canvas, which was released in 2017. So with the makers of the community canvas, Fabian Fortmüller, and together with Michelle Bachman, Erin Dixon, and Zita, we're looking at how can we shift our understanding of community from community building to community weaving, given that we are now shifting also our perspective of a lot of the framings around community building is so mechanistic and it's so linear. It's so focused on, okay, this is the blocks of it, and then that's it. So we're seeing now how it is so dynamic, and not just being dynamic, but also how it incorporates the different elements around circularity or linearity. And I was like, when the community canvas was created, a lot of people who made use of it gave feedback that it was an easy way for them to understand community, yet it did not show the shifting of perspective around how can we be more life-giving? How can we see community weaving as a factor of creating regenerative communities that nurtures belonging, fosters co-creation, and strengthens reciprocity? So at the
we have the day where all the tech is failing us, apparently. Oh, there we go. Lana, you seem to be back.
It's indeed failing us. It's one of those days. Well, how I was sharing a while ago is, again, this shifting of perspective of engagement. I know for most of us, we're very much familiar with the 99.1% So the 90% are lurkers, the 9% are your commentators, and the 1% are your creators. So this is the rule of participation inequality that has been promoted because of social media. And if we go back to the shifting from community building to community weaving, there is also the language of how do we see people in communities. If we go by the term lurkers, I don't know how it is for you, but for me, when I think of lurkers, it lands so harshly in my body, you know, like, oh, 90% are lurkers, you know, like stalkers. So this idea of how can we be more human-centric, like what was mentioned a while ago of in the experience around community engagement. So this language for me started these conversations around community engagement of how might engagement be looked at not from a passive lens but from a differentiated lens. So in the field of education, differentiated education means looking at ways in which you can provide materials or learning support that meets the needs of the learners. And this is how I got into thinking that we are complex individuals, you know, we are complex beings, and designing for engagement needs to attend to these complexities. We need to look at it that there is no right way, you know, no one right way to engage people in community. Plus this idea also of we need to have people that are highly engaged is also problematic because now we're seeing that there's quite a lot of burnout within community. There's founders, stewards. So there is this idea of how might we be able to offer differentiated opportunities to meet people where they are at. And this is where I came up with this question of how are we providing different opportunities for people to engage based on their heart? And that is based on their health, based on their energy, based on their attention, resources, and time. And this heart model, heart keys, can help us to define, okay, but how am I attending to these different keys for engagement? When looking at, oh, yes, thank you. Now I have the power to share screen. Share screen. 2%. There you go. So how are we looking at the health factor, right? So the overall well-being and wellness within communities. Right now, there's a big question around how are we creating safer and brave spaces for communities? How are we creating psychological safety in our communities? Are the needs being met within the communities? And how are we building the trust within members and leaders and also other parts of other stakeholders within community? Are people feeling emotionally regulated to connect? And this has something to do also within that premise of creating safer and brave spaces within communities. And do people feel they belong within a community? So the health factor is very important for people to engage. And you've probably seen it within your communities that if people don't feel that they feel safe or that they trust people, they're least likely to engage. Another is the energy. Alongside time, energy is one of our biggest resources. It talks about the strength, the vitality, and the capacity of people to engage. So when people are being asked to take part in something, the question that we need to also take into consideration is how much energy will this take? What is within the capacity of people? Like for this period right now, I know Christmas season or the holiday season is December period is one of the busiest part of the year. So what is within the capacity of people if they are going to do more activities within this period? In what ways can this replenish energy? And in what ways can this, give back energy or drain energy. So there's questions around how can this, allow people to own the energy that they bring in the community. And of course, attention, which is very much, one, it needs to be sustained. There is also selected or selective attention. There's divided attention, and there's alternating attention. So there's different forms of attention that we also need to think about. And the questions that you might want to ask is, what do people need to focus on? How much intensity and vigilance is needed? What distractors do we need to pay attention to and ignore? And this is also why I love one of the tools that I've been sharing is WHOOP. WHOOP is a scientifically backed practice of looking at what is the wish, what is the outcome, what are the obstacles, and how can you plan for obstacles. So this is part of that, the distractors that might happen when you're engaging or asking people to engage. And then what needs shifting in terms of in their attention, and what requires ease in effort or due diligence when they are either creating, participating, or actively engaging in activities. And then resources, who can support them? How can they support? What mental, physical, social, financial resources will this entail? Resources can, specifically, these are the support that they can find. And oftentimes what we forget is who can support us. Just for us to be here in this space, we have most likely people who are supporting the other fronts in what we're doing. So that is also something to acknowledge, that when we invite people to a gathering, to an event, they have, they need to have that support system that allows them to engage in that way. And how can you, service that? How can you be grateful for that? Or how can you also intentionally give thanks for that? And then, of course, time. This is really looking at the rhythm, the cycles, what's the length of commitment? Is there a specific cadence, weekly, daily, monthly? How much time is needed on also within this different cadence? And are there certain engagement that changes over time? So these are some of the questions that you might want to look at even before, you're inviting people already in in a specific activity. So in creating your events, in creating the activities that you're planning, try to look at this 5 different keys, and that this makes also the invitation for people easier, especially in terms of time, right? When people know, oh, this would only take X amount of their time, it also becomes an easier way, a safer way for them to get to a commitment. And then, of course, as we went through the 5 keys of engagement, we also need to think of, but not everyone is, very centered to the core activities of the community, or not everyone are, as involved, or not everyone can be involved depending on the situation they're in. So what I present here is the slider method or model, wherein we look at engagement as a slider, that people can slide in and out of different spaces. So we have the centers, the neutral, the tinder, the kindling, the fuel. And as they move in and out based from, again, their heart, right? Their health, their energy, attention, resources, and time, it's understanding that they cannot always be, firekeepers. They probably can say yes to a particular role as a firekeeper in a project, but they might say no, or they might want to say just to be in the discerner's level for a particular activity. So this idea is that engagement is not static. It moves, it flows, and that we need to also respect where people are at a given time and place or space that they are in. So who do we see? We have, of course, the oppositioners, which are those that are totally against what we're doing. There's the naysayers, there's the doubters. So in this space of dissenters, we need to be offering spaces where they can know more about our community. So there's the awareness. What's this? There's the piece of how to invite them through compassion. So creating listening circles, understanding where they're coming from. And I indicated here the term KAPWA. So KAPWA is a Filipino core value, which means seeing each other in our shared humanity. So what are the activities that we can see dissenters in our shared humanity? And then, of course, there's those people who are neutral. They are the fence sitters. They might, they might have heard something about you, but they don't really, they're not yet in a space that they would want to engage. And the invitation piece is very crucial at this point. How are we providing invitation to people so that they can get to an awareness level, of what is the community about, who who are part of the community, what's the value, what's the mission, the vision. So these are in the Tinder space, where we're sparking the flame, we're letting them discern, is this something for me or is this not something for me, and letting them deconstruct what they already know and try to fit this in as, oh yeah, maybe this resonates with me. So in this space of awareness is really providing the container, like the guidelines, the principles, the information that they would need to see if it's something that is for them. And then from that space of figuring out, who this community is for, what the community is doing, and getting more involved, there is this kindling that happens. They're stoking the fire, the activation that's needed. So people can get into conversations, they get to be enablers, they get to be advocates. So they then start talking about the community as well outside of the community. They probably are also getting more interested in the other different ways so that they can be part of the community. They're probably also talking about the events, the activities, and encouraging others to start joining. And then the last piece is when they get into passing the torch, the fuel, wherein there's now stewardship. They see themselves as initiators, collaborators, and firekeepers. This visual, and I'm gonna share this again, this visual of the community. At the center of the community are the possibilities, the fire, right? And in this fire, we have people that needs to tend to that fire. So the possibilities of the community with your mission, your vision, your manifesto, and all that, for it to grow, for it to come alive, we need firekeepers who would tend to the fire along with the fire, fire starters or the founders. So this language of, we need people who initiates things, who then also collaborates with each other for different activities, and then who also stewards or co-stewards the community with you, and are serving as that firekeepers that tend to the flame, that tend to the fire. So this engagement slider, in a nutshell, is, like what I said, it allows us to see engagement from moving from different, from different sides, and that movement happens depending on their health, their energy, their attention, their resources, and time, and that is okay. And this also is something that is shifting when it comes to engagement, that we don't want them to always be firekeepers, to always be collaborators, because then the risk of burnout is so high within our community members. So we'd want them to engage in ways that serves them, engage in ways that are regenerative or restorative. So asking ourselves also of how are we distributing roles, for example, within the communities? How are we allowing also people that we might, that we probably know have the tendency to always say yes to, really encourage them to say, oh, maybe this time, that they can take in different roles rather than the lead roles within the community. So how I see it is, if we are to look at creating this shift of from community building to community weaving and being in right relationships with each other, how are we then looking at our members from the lens of where are they at in their, in their life, in their health, their energy, their attention, resources, and time, and how is this affecting how they're engaging their communities or contributing to how they're engaging to the community. And I'm gonna stop share because I know I've shared a lot, and I'm curious to, for questions or feedback on the slider, the engagement slider.
Yeah, I really love that, and I really appreciate the sort of KAPWA that, as you're saying, like that shared humanity that you're bringing at every stage of the slider. Makes me realize that in our own community in Arendau, we are doing very little for the middle. We're almost like everyone needs to go to become very much a contributor, a fire starter, and we're not doing enough things for the middle. I guess those that we have for softer form of engagement is perhaps these events where we have once a week or so some conversations, and we have definitely nothing for these centers other than let's say the availability of conflict resolution mediators. But I don't feel it's the same. Like when you were talking about the sharing circle, it felt like a more inviting space, because it's like it's not necessarily that I have a conflict with someone, or in my experience a lot with conflict resolution, people tend to shy away from accepting that they have a conflict, even though they have strong tension with someone else, and that has made them a lot less engaged than they were before.
Oh yes, I totally resonate with that, and also recognize that with, again, this is the framing, right? Our framing is everybody needs to be fully engaged. So our tendency is to shift our attention also and focus to how do we get people to be fully engaged, right? So this is also why the challenging of perception is important. And yes, this is also for offline communities as well. How are we seeing where people are at? So for me, how I see the engagement slider is really seeing meeting where people are at, and providing the right enough type of engagement that fits where they're at, and that fits that values them at where they at that given moment. So it might be that in a particular community, I can give an example. Like in a particular community, there was one of the firekeepers was very much active, and then she lost her partner, and that set a different tone in how she was engaging. And at first she was really like, no, but I have responsibilities, I need to do this, so she was still trying to engage in the same way as she did before she lost her partner. But the community talked it out amongst each other and saying, no, she needed the time for her to grieve. She needed the time for and support, so that she can re-engage back to the community in ways that is not, demanding and taxing for her. So that was regenerative. That was restorative. That the community, that the other members of the community has told her, no, you need to take the space. You need to pause first from being a firekeeper to take whichever is possible for you, for your energy level, for your attention. And that made her feel so expansive that after 6 months, she said, okay, I think I can, start re-engaging back more intensely. So this is a very good example of how we can see people aside from who they are in the community. We need to look at it from the systems that they're part of, right? So either they're a parent or, they're working. So there's so many complexities to add into this layer that allows for us to, again, be in KAPWA with each other, for me to see your humanity and for you to see my humanity.
Beautiful. Thank you. David is asking 2 questions. He's saying, does this work for offline communities just as well?
Yeah, so the example that I shared with you was an offline community. And how do we categorize the different level of the slider? So for now, the categorization that I've put in is from it's using the dissenters, the neutral, the tinder, the kindling, and the fuel. So to see more of the buckets in which they go towards the center, they go towards the fire. So that is how I've phrased the different the different phases going to the middle part or going to the center of the fire. And then underneath it, you would see, compassion, invitation, awareness, activation, and stewardship. These are more of like how they fill in the roles, or what we need to provide so that they can fill in the roles. I actually have, and I'm going to share my screen because I've created a guide, a facilitator's guide around this. So, I don't know why there's a link in there. But you can see the facilitator's guide in my website. So you can look at it from the tools part where you can see different tools, but also the slider, because in the guide I talk more about what do we mean in those different phases, and also what are the different activities that we might want to use, like the listening circles, communities of practice. So where can we fit all these different types of activities in that framework? And let me see if I can just pull it up so that you can also see that. Just gonna bring the facilitator guide. I'm gonna share screen again. So this is part of the facilitator guide, where you would see the different, from the dissenters to the neutral, and then what is needed and how to reach them, and then possible pitfalls. So this is a bit more fleshed out in the guide itself. And then also, some questions around, reflections around the model, like what other questions do you have? What might be patterns that you're noticing, the traps that you're seeing, how do you see the distribution, like what you already shared, Daniel? How do you see the distribution across the community members? Like, are there more from this end rather than in the middle and the end as well? So, and then destruction, I love using what needs to be let go of when it comes to your community engagement activities, and what actions are you taking now that you know where people are at, and the mapping that you did, and then whose support would you need for these actions, and what other insights or curiosities. So these are all part of the facilitator guide. So yeah, David. I cannot put everything in a very short. So distilling a couple of months' work in an hour is a bit tricky. But yeah, you can find those things in the facilitator guide. Other questions? Questions, comments, thoughts?
I wanted to ask you a little bit more for the sort of the center space. So you mentioned the sort of listening circles. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, so I'm gonna first send the link here for those who want to go directly. So this can be like spaces where people can, like I like how you've shared it already, Daniel, of how can people land within a community. And for most people, if there's like what I mentioned, if there's no safety or sense of safety, or there's no trust, then it's so difficult for people to land. So if you want to, if you're intentionally wanting to invite people who might be in that space that are, against your movement or against the community that you're doing, and just to get the perspective of what's holding them back from, from joining, or what's holding them back from seeing what the community is about, or at least hearing what this community about. So this listening spaces is for them to share their experiences, their lived experiences, and then for you to take it in. But of course, this is within boundary, right? This needs to have a firm boundary of what is acceptable in these listening spaces. So it needs someone that can hold the space well, a facilitator, a mediator. And like what we've also did, or like what we did in the activity a while ago, is to practice pakikiramdam. What is the shared perception? So how can we get to the shared perception if we don't find a means or opportunity for us to hear other perceptions in the first place? So this is that invitation, like having opportunities where people who might be doubting, people who might be naysayers, to share what's alive in them.
Makes sense. Thank you. Thank you. Have no more questions at this stage. Does anyone else have anything that they would like to ask or suggest or share from your own experience in community building?
Yeah, or maybe how, and this is also one of the invitations that's in the Jamboard. I love using this, I would say, thinking tool, which is I used to think and now I think. So given what I've shared, I'm curious to know what is there some shifts, or is there even just a small shift of what did you use to think about community and community engagement, and what is budding for you? It might not be that it's a full shift, but what's budding for you? What's coming up? And what might you explore as well?
There is, for me, something that I'm thinking in DAOs. There is a sort of layer of engagement that's very loose. That is the sort of people that receive an airdrop of the token, or maybe they see the news and so on, but they don't really interact with the community. They just passively consume something from it. And then the contributors. And there is a layer in between that I have usually dismissed, that is people who engage a little bit, but they don't become quite contributors yet. And now I'm having a renewed curiosity for who are these people and why do they stay at this layer? Well, before I wasn't really thinking that much about it. I was thinking at the extremes, but not that one in the middle, which you have, because you have it a lot more nuanced. I think you had like 2 or 3 things that roughly could feel about that. So I'm quite wondering about that. I'm also seeing David shared being more intentional in crafting community and looking at the community as comprised as individuals with complex needs rather than community, which can be abstract.
Yes. Oh, I'm celebrating that, David. Yeah. This is also looking at it from a systems level, right? So you have also from the work of Richard Bartlett, right? So you have the individual, and then you have the pair, and then you have the crew, and then you have the congregation. So it's a level of scale. Community is a level of scale. Even within ourselves, we are composed of parts within our own system. So we carry that as well. So even just within us, there's already different parts that come in community. So how do we bring all of us, or some of us, some parts of us within the community? And then how do we get that to when we're engaging with 1 or 2 or 6? So these are different ways to see the levels of scale that happens. And then again, the spaces that happens not just within people, but also within ourselves. So we need to also look back that we are part of that, we are part of the community.
Yeah, Pier Paolo has a question about, does this tool work for both communities of practice and communities of product? How can we best engage members in a community of product without making it seem like a marketing channel? Yeah,
so thank you for sharing that, Paula, around the difference between, like, specifically, I'm just gonna be naming it as brand communities, right? So when there's a very specific brand that is being highlighted, what I've seen that has worked is to also tap it in as, okay, so even though there's a specific product where it's attached to, but what is the value that this product creates outside of that, outside of the product? Does it allow for people to say, for example, and this is, I'm just going to think about some coaching clients that I have wherein they offer, they offer their group coaching program as a way to create that community. And then at the same time, it's like, now that they're part of that community, in what ways can you encourage them to collaborate with each other, for example, or initiate activities that they're doing that they want to also be part of? So this is also thinking along the lines of how might people bring themselves in outside of just purchasing a product or or purchasing a service. So the question is, once that they've purchased a product or once they've purchased a service, how else are they engaging with each other, and not just with the product or the service, with each other? And how are they also showing up with themselves with it? So, like, say, for example, I'm reminded of, I'm part of a mentor for the Vision 2020 program for Happy Startups. So we have a community, it's a cohort program of 20 leaders or 20 entrepreneurs within 20 weeks. And then we guide them through a learning program and learning and mentoring program. So right now we've had about, this is now our 6th cohort. And we have now alumni that has served, that has been part of the program. Now the question is, how are we engaging them in ways that benefits them as well? So inviting them for, to share their stories of change, so that they can also practice sharing how they've grown as entrepreneurs or profile themselves in other ways. So this is now, how do I invite them so that they can also show up in different ways? So I do hope this gives you some ideas, Paula, and I would love to, in my tools, there's also one tool that might be helpful, is the Satir change model. So this is a change model that ties in also perfectly with this engagement slider, to look at how do we merge the story of change or the transformation that the community members go through, and perhaps the ways in which they would want to engage within the community.
That's really, really fantastic. Thank you, Lana, so much. Really, really appreciated having you here. We're at time. So if anyone wants, you can engage with Lana on LinkedIn. Lana, if you have the link at hand in case anyone hasn't seen it.
I would just put in my LinkedIn. Please do connect with me at LinkedIn or with my website. You can subscribe so that you can also get notifications. I do have events that I hold, like on the 20th, I'll be doing an envisioning. So for those who would want to envision 2023 in ways that's more regenerative and restorative, so please join me. And then that you can also find in my website.
Great. Fantastic. Thanks again, Lana. And thank you everyone for joining us. Hopefully see you all soon.